I'm Lena Carroway, 27 years old. Until 3 months ago, I believed family meant safety. Then my mother's phone call changed everything. "Lena, honey, I need to tell you something about your savings account." The words hit me like ice, water. My emergency fund, $5,000 scraped together through years of 60-hour weeks and ramen dinners, was gone. Given to my Uncle Dean without my permission. He promised he'd pay it back this time, she whispered through tears. What she didn't know was that I had been supporting her secretly for 2 years, covering her rent when her disability checks fell short. My uncle's words from that same phone call still haunt me. "Family takes care of family, Lena. That's what your money was for." But here's what makes this story even more unbelievable. What I discovered about where my money really went would shatter everything I thought I knew about the people who raised me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The photo sits on my kitchen counter, edges soft from years of handling. I'm 8 years, old in it, gap-toothed and grinning between Mom and Uncle Dean at Navy Pier. Dean's arm is slung around both of us, his smile wide and genuine. Mom looks young, happy, the kind of carefree I haven't seen on her face in years. We're eating cotton candy and there's powdered sugar on Dean's shirt. It was taken the summer before everything started falling apart. I remember that day with painful clarity. Dean had just started his job at the warehouse, the one that was supposed to change everything. He'd been clean for 6 months, or so we thought, and Mom was so proud of him. "Your uncle's really turned his life around, Lena," she'd whispered to me as we walked toward the Ferris wheel. "We're finally going to be a real family." That was 19 years ago. The warehouse job lasted 3 weeks. The sobriety lasted maybe a little longer. My apartment reflects who I've become in the aftermath of that broken promise. It's a studio in Lincoln Park, 400 square feet of carefully curated minimalism. Every piece of furniture serves multiple purposes. The coffee table opens to store blankets. The ottoman holds all my work files, and my bed transforms into a couch during the day. Nothing here is wasted space or wasted money. I learned early that security comes from what you can control, and I can control every inch of this small sanctuary. The morning light streams through my single window, illuminating dust motes that dance above my laptop. I've been staring at my bank statement for 20 minutes, the numbers blurring together as I try to make sense of my new reality. 0. After 3 years of building, saving, sacrificing, 0. My phone buzzes. Tasha's name flashes on the screen, and I know she's calling to check on me. She's been doing that a lot since I told her what happened. "Morning, babe." Her voice carries that careful tone people use when they're worried about you. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine." I lie, closing my laptop. "Just working on the Morrison account, Lena." There's a pause, and I can picture her in her downtown office, designer heels kicked off under her standing desk, her natural hair pulled into a high bun. "You don't have to pretend with me. Your family just stole $5,000 from you. It's okay to not be fine." Stole. The word sits heavy between us. I've been avoiding it, but that's exactly what it was. Mom had access to my account from when I was in college and too broke to maintain the minimum balance. I'd never changed it because I trusted her. Because family meant safety. It wasn't stealing, I say automatically, the words tasting bitter. She thought she was helping. "Without asking you? Without even telling you until after?" Tasha's voice sharpens. "That's theft, Lena. Legal theft, but theft." I walk to my kitchen, all 3 feet of it, and pour yesterday's coffee into a mug. It's cold and tastes like regret, but I drink it anyway. Waste not, want not. Mom's voice echoes in my memory, from back when we had so little that every penny mattered. "He's family," I whisper, hating how weak it sounds. "So are you. You're her daughter. Where was her loyalty to you? I don't have an answer for that. Instead, I change the subject. How's the UX project going? Tasha lets me deflect, but I can hear her frustration. She's been my best friend since college, and she's watched me navigate my family's chaos for nearly a decade. She grew up in foster care, bounced between homes that never quite felt safe, so she has little patience for people who take family for granted, or who let family take advantage of them. The client wants to add 17 new features to the app, she says. I told them they're basically asking me to redesign the internet, but apparently that's what they're paying me for. We chat about work for a few more minutes, carefully avoiding the elephant in the room. After we hang up, I find myself staring at the family photo again. That little girl in the picture believed in happy endings. She believed that people who loved you would protect you, not drain your bank account while you slept. My phone rings again. This time it's Mom. Hi, honey, she says, and I can already hear the guilt weighing down her voice. I know you're probably still upset with me. Upset. As if this is about hurt feelings and not about the fact that I might not be able to pay rent next month. I'm working, Mom. I know. I just wanted to let you know that Dean is doing really well. He's been to 3 meetings this week already. 3 meetings. In a week, as if that erases 2 decades of broken promises and stolen opportunities. That's great, I say, because what else can I say? He's so grateful, Lena. He knows what a gift this is, and he's not going to waste it. He's already looking into that residential program in Evanston. The residential program costs $15,000. My $5,000 was just the down payment. Mom, I need to go. Of course, honey. I love you. Love you too. I hang up and immediately feel guilty for the coldness in my voice. This is the woman who raised me, who worked double shifts at the diner to keep us afloat when Dad left. She taught me how to coupon and budget and make a dollar stretch until it screamed. She also taught me that family comes first, always, even when it destroys you. Especially when it destroys you. My laptop chimes with an email notification. It's from my landlord. A gentle reminder that rent is due in 5 days. $800 that I used to have, but no longer do. I have enough in my checking account to cover it, but that will leave me with maybe $50 for food and transportation for the rest of the month. I open my freelance client dashboard and scan for any quick turnaround projects. There's a social media campaign for a local restaurant that needs copy by tomorrow, pays $300. A website redesign for a startup that'll take a week, but pays $800. I accept both, knowing I'll be working until midnight for the next 7 days straight. This is what financial insecurity feels like. A constant hum of anxiety, like a low-grade fever that never breaks. It's calculating the cost of everything. Coffee, gas, a sandwich, and mentally subtracting it from an ever-shrinking pool of resources. It's making decisions based not on what you want or need, but on what you can afford. It's the feeling that you're always one emergency away from losing everything you've worked for. I'd forgotten this feeling. For 3 years, I'd been building a buffer between myself and financial disaster. Every dollar saved was a day I wouldn't have to choose between electricity and groceries. Every milestone reached, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, was proof that I was finally safe. Now, I'm back where I started, except worse. Now I know exactly how much security costs and how easily it can disappear. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Hey, it's Nico from 3B. I saw your laptop bag on the stairs yesterday. Hope you didn't drop anything important. Let me know if you need help looking for anything. Nico, my neighbor who I've exchanged maybe 20 words with in the 8 months I've lived here. He works at some nonprofit and always seems to be carrying reusable grocery bags full of fresh vegetables. He has kind eyes and calloused hands, and sometimes I hear him playing guitar through the thin walls late at night. I text back, "Thanks, but I think everything's accounted for. Appreciate you checking." He responds immediately, "No problem. I'm around if you need anything." It's a simple offer, the kind neighbors make to each other. But something about his timing, about the way he phrased it, "I'm around if you need anything," makes me wonder if he somehow knows that I'm barely keeping it together. I spend the rest of the morning working on the restaurant campaign, crafting posts about their new brunch menu, and trying to make Eggs Benedict sound life-changing. It's mindless work, the kind that pays the bills but doesn't feed the soul. I used to dream of starting my own marketing firm, of working with clients whose missions I believed in. Now I write Instagram captions about bottomless mimosas and pretend it's fulfilling. Around noon, I take a break to call my bank. The customer service representative confirms what I already know. The withdrawal was authorized because my mother is still listed as a joint account holder. To remove her, I'll need to close the account and open a new one. I understand this might be difficult, the representative says, her voice professionally sympathetic. Family financial situations can be complicated. Complicated. That's one way to put it. After I hang up, I sit in the silence of my apartment and try to remember the last time I felt truly safe. Not just financially secure, but safe. Protected. The memory that comes is unexpected. I'm 16, and Mom and I are grocery shopping together. She lets me pick out name-brand cereal instead of the generic kind, and when I ask why, she says, "Because you work hard in school, and you deserve something nice." It was a small gesture, maybe $10 difference, in our weekly budget. But it felt like love. It felt like being seen and valued and prioritized. When did that change? When did I become the one expected to sacrifice for everyone else's happiness? The afternoon stretches ahead of me, filled with deadlines and invoices, and the constant mental math of survival. But for just a moment, I let myself imagine a different life. One where my savings account is mine alone. Where my family's emergencies don't become my financial disasters. Where I'm not constantly calculating whether I can afford to care about myself. It feels impossible and selfish and absolutely necessary. The family photo catches the light again, and I see something I hadn't noticed before. In the picture, 8-year-old, me is holding tight to both Mom and Dean, my small hands gripping their arms like I'm afraid they'll disappear. Even then, I was trying to hold our little family together. Maybe it's time to let go. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I know the exact time because I was staring at my phone screen when it lit up. Mom's contact photo, her smiling face from last Christmas, glowing in the darkness of my bedroom. I'd been lying awake for hours, mind racing through client deadlines, and grocery lists and the persistent worry that always seemed to visit me in the quiet hours before dawn. "Lena?" Her voice was thick with tears and something else. Whiskey, maybe, or wine. "Honey, are you awake?" I sat up, instantly alert. Mom rarely drank, and she never called this late unless something was seriously wrong. "What's happening? Are you okay?" "I need to tell you something." The words came out in a rush, like she'd been rehearsing them. "About your savings account." My blood went cold. "What about it?" "Dean, he was in trouble. Real trouble this time. He owed some people money, bad people, and they were threatening to..." Her voice broke. "He came to me crying, Lena. Begging. Said they were going to hurt him if he didn't pay by Friday." I was already reaching for my laptop, fingers trembling, as I opened my banking app. The page loaded slowly, each second stretching into eternity. "Mom, what did you do?" I gave him the money. "From your account, all of it." The numbers on my screen confirmed what my heart already knew. Balance, 0. You'll know. Last transaction, wire transfer, $5,000, years, date, yesterday. "You took my money." The words fell flat in the air between us. Without asking me. "I was going to tell you, I swear. But he needed it right away, and I couldn't reach you. And I thought..." "You thought what?" I was standing now, pacing the small space between my bed and window. You thought you'd just steal from your daughter to bail out your brother? Again? It's not stealing. The defensiveness in her voice was sharp, familiar. It's family helping. Family. That's what we do. No, Mom. That's what I do. I help. I always help. But this? I gestured at my laptop screen, even though she couldn't see me. This is different. He promised he'll pay it back. With interest. He's starting a new job next week and... A new job? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. What happened? To the construction job he started last month? Or the delivery job before that? Silence. He's using again, isn't he? No. But her voice wavered. He's been clean for 3 months. 3 months, I repeated. And before that? More silence. We both knew the answer. Before that, it had been 2 years of broken promises, missed family dinners, and desperate late-night phone calls. 2 years of Dean cycling through jobs and apartments and sobriety programs like he was shopping for the perfect fit. I thought, this time was different, Mom whispered. You always think this time is different. I closed my laptop and walked to my kitchen, suddenly desperate for something to do with my hands. I opened the refrigerator and stared at its meager contents. Leftover takeout from 3 days ago, a carton of milk that was probably expired, and a bag of baby carrots that had seen better days. How much did he really owe? I asked. What? The people he owed money to. How much? Another pause. I don't know. He didn't say exactly, but you gave him $5,000. He said that would cover it and help him get back on his feet. I closed the refrigerator and leaned against it, feeling the cool metal against my back. Mom, do you understand what you've done? That money wasn't just sitting there for fun. It was my emergency fund, my safety net, the thing that stood between me and... I gestured around my tiny apartment. And this being even worse. I know, honey, I know. But you're doing so well. You have your business, and your nice apartment, and... My nice apartment? I looked around at my 400 square feet of carefully managed survival. Mom, I eat ramen for dinner 3 nights a week. I haven't bought new clothes in 8 months. I cut my own hair because I can't afford a salon. What about any of that sounds like I'm doing well? But you're so independent, so strong. You don't need... I do need. The words came out louder than I intended. I need that money. I need to know that if something goes wrong, if I get sick or lose a client or my laptop dies, I won't end up homeless. That money was the difference between making it and not making it. I could hear her crying now, soft sniffles that made my chest tight with guilt. This was my mother, the woman who had raised me alone after Dad left, who had worked double shifts to keep us afloat. She'd never asked me for anything directly, never made her struggles my responsibility. But somehow they had become my responsibility anyway. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Lena. I thought I was protecting both of you. Protecting me? From what? From having to choose between helping your uncle and taking care of yourself. I thought if I just handled it quietly, you wouldn't have to carry that guilt. The guilt. Always the guilt. The invisible weight that had shaped every decision I'd made since I was old enough to understand that our family was different, more fragile than others. The guilt that made me send Mom money when her disability check was late. The guilt that made me lie to friends about why I couldn't go to concerts or dinners or weekend trips. The guilt that turned every dollar I spent on myself into a small betrayal of the people who needed me. So instead, you just made the choice for me. Yes. Her voice was barely audible. And I was wrong. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her it was okay, and that we'd figure it out together. But I couldn't. For the first time in my adult life, I couldn't summon the energy to make my mother feel better about hurting me. I have to go, I said. Lena, wait. Please. Let's talk about this. Maybe we can... I can't right now, Mom. I can't. I hung up and immediately turned off my phone, unable to bear the thought of her calling back. The apartment felt smaller than usual, the walls pressing in as I tried to process what had just happened. $5,000. Gone. I'd started building that fund 3 years ago with a $20 bill I'd found in an old coat pocket. $20 that I'd almost spent on coffee and pastries, but instead deposited into a new savings account. I'd opened specifically for emergencies. It had taken me 6 months to reach the first 1,000, celebrating each milestone with a text to Tasha and a single glass of wine on my fire escape. The second 1,000 had come easier as my freelance business grew. I'd landed a big client, a tech startup that needed help with their content strategy, and for the first time in my life, I had more money coming in than going out. Instead of upgrading my lifestyle, I'd funneled every extra dollar into that account. By the third year, I'd developed a system. 20% of every payment went straight to savings, no matter what. Even when my laptop screen cracked, and I had to choose between fixing it and eating out for a month. Even when Mom's rent was late, and she'd mentioned it casually, like maybe I could help out just this once. Even when Dean had called me directly, 6 months ago, asking if I could loan him money for a security deposit on a new apartment. I'd said no to Dean. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, listening to him promise that he was clean and stable, and just needed one small favor to get his life back on track. But I'd said no because that money represented something bigger than individual emergencies. It represented the possibility of a future where I wasn't constantly afraid. Now it was gone, and I was right back where I'd started. I walked to my window and looked out at the street below. Chicago never truly slept, but at 3 a.m., even the city felt quieter, more contemplative. A few cars passed by, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, and I wondered what emergency it was rushing toward. What crisis would reshape someone else's carefully constructed life? My phone, still turned off, sat silent on my counter. But I could imagine the messages piling up. Mom calling back, probably leaving voicemails that alternated between apologies and justifications. Maybe Dean would call too, wanting to thank me for my generosity, or assure me that he'd pay me back soon. But I knew he wouldn't pay me back. They always promised to pay back the money, and they never did. Not because they were malicious, but because addiction and chaos don't operate on repayment schedules. By next week, Dean would have a new crisis, a new emergency that required immediate attention and financial assistance. The $5,000 would disappear into whatever black hole had swallowed all the other money our family had ever given him. I thought about calling Tasha, but I couldn't bear the thought of saying the words out loud. My mother stole my emergency fund. It sounded too dramatic, too much like something that happened to other people who didn't have their lives together. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea and sat at my small dining table, really just a desk that pulled double duty and tried to figure out what came next. Rent was due in 5 days. I had maybe $300 in my checking account, plus whatever payments would come in from current clients over the next week. If I was lucky, and if everyone paid on time, I might scrape together enough to cover rent. Might. But that would leave me with nothing for food, gas, utilities, or any of the 100 small expenses that kept life running. And God forbid anything went wrong. If my car broke down or I got sick or lost a client, I had no safety net left to catch me. The tea was bitter, but I drank it anyway, letting the heat spread through my chest as I contemplated my options. I could take on more freelance work, but I was already stretched thin. I could ask friends for money, but the thought made my stomach churn with shame. I could get a credit card, but that felt like trading one kind of financial insecurity for another. Or I could do what I'd always done, adapt, survive, make do with less. But something felt different this time. Maybe it was the late hour, or the way my mother's voice had sounded when she'd tried to justify betraying my trust. Maybe it was the realization that no matter how hard I worked or how carefully I planned, I would never be safe as long as my family's emergencies were automatically my emergencies. For the first time in my life, I felt truly angry at the people I loved most. The anger was clean and sharp, different from the complicated guilt and resentment that usually colored my family interactions. This was pure fury at having my choices stolen from me, at being treated like a piggy bank instead of a person with her own needs and dreams. I finished my tea and went back to bed, but sleep didn't come. Instead, I lay in the darkness and let myself imagine what I would have done if Mom had called to ask instead of calling to confess. Would I have said yes? Would I have emptied my savings account voluntarily to save Dean from whatever consequences his choices had created? The honest answer was probably yes, because that's what good daughters do. That's what family means. But lying there in the aftermath, staring at the ceiling while my financial security evaporated into nothing, I wondered if maybe family shouldn't mean that. Maybe love shouldn't require constant sacrifice. Maybe caring about someone didn't have to mean setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. By the time morning came, I'd made a decision. I turned my phone back on and scrolled through the 17 missed calls and 11 voicemails from Mom. But instead of listening to them, I opened my banking app and began the process of removing her from my account. It was time to build new boundaries, even if it meant building them alone. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. 3 days after the phone call, Dean showed up at my door. I was in the middle of a video conference with a client when I heard the familiar knock. 3 quick taps, pause, 2 more taps. It was the same pattern he'd used when I was a kid, and he'd sneak over after fighting with whatever girlfriend he was living with at the time. Back then, that knock meant stories and candy, and someone who treated me like I was interesting instead of just another responsibility. Now it made my stomach clench with dread. I need to step away for just a moment, I told my client, muting my microphone. Technical difficulties. Through the peephole, I could see him shifting from foot to foot in the hallway, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. He looked thinner than the last time I'd seen him, his cheeks hollow beneath stubble that was more gray than brown. But his eyes were clear, clearer than they'd been in years. I unlocked the door but kept the chain latch engaged, opening it just wide enough to see his face. "Hey, kiddo." His smile was tentative, hopeful. "Can we talk?" "I'm working." I know. This'll just take a minute." He glanced down the hallway, then back at me. "Please, Lena, I owe you an explanation." Against my better judgment, I closed the door, unlatched the chain, and opened it again. Dean stepped inside, taking in my tiny apartment with the same careful assessment he'd always applied to new spaces, looking for exits, evaluating threats, cataloging anything valuable. Old habits from old addictions. "Nice place," he said, though we both knew it wasn't. "Very organized." I gestured toward my laptop, where my client was probably wondering if I'd disappeared entirely. "I really am in the middle of something important?" "Right, of course. Your business." He sat down on my couch without being invited, pulling a small notebook from his jacket pocket. "I wanted to bring you this, and to explain what happened." The notebook was black, leather-bound, the kind you might buy at a bookstore when you're feeling optimistic about changing your life. The cover was worn smooth from handling, and pages stuck out at odd angles like it had been stuffed full of loose papers and receipts. "What is it?" "My recovery journal. From the program." He held it out to me. "I wanted you to see how serious I am this time. About getting clean, about paying you back, about everything." I took the journal reluctantly, feeling its weight in my hands. It was thicker than I'd expected, dense with what looked like months of daily entries. "Dean, I can't do this right now. I have a client waiting and just flip through it. Please. You'll see that this isn't like the other times. I opened to a random page dated 6 weeks ago. Day 47 clean. Went to 2 meetings today. Sponsor says I need to make amends to the people I've hurt. The list is so long I don't know where to start. Lena is at the top, though. Everything I put, her and Ava through over the years. I need to make it right. Another page from a month earlier, called that residential place in Evanston. $15,000 for 6 months, but they have a 78% success rate. If I can just get the money together, I know I can make this work. This time will be different. And another, from 2 months ago. Ava says Lena has been saving money. She's always been so responsible, so much better than me. Maybe if I explain the situation, she'll understand. Family helps family, right? My hands started shaking. You planned this. No, that's not. You planned to take my money. I flipped through more pages, seeing my name scattered throughout entries that detailed his financial needs, his certainty that I would help, his elaborate justifications for why he deserved another chance. You've been thinking about it for months. It wasn't like that, Lena. I never asked Ava to. But you knew she would. I closed the journal and held it against my chest like a shield. You knew exactly what would happen if you told her you were in danger. You knew she'd panic and give you whatever you wanted. Dean's face crumpled, and for a moment he looked like the uncle I'd adored as a child, vulnerable, ashamed, desperately wanting to be better than he was. I was scared. These people, they weren't playing around. They said if I didn't pay by Friday. What people? The guys I owed money to. For what? His silence stretched between us, heavy with implications I didn't want to explore. For what, Dean? Cards, he said finally. Poker mostly, some sports betting. The room tilted slightly. Gambling? It wasn't supposed to go that far. I was winning for a while, really winning, and I thought, you told Mom it was drugs. The words came out flat, matter of fact. You let her think you owed money to drug dealers. I never said that specifically. You let her think it. I stood up, suddenly unable to sit still. You let her think your life was in danger from drug dealers because you knew that would scare her enough to do anything, including stealing, from her own daughter. I didn't steal anything. The defensiveness flared up, quick and familiar. That money was a gift, a loan, whatever you want to call it. It was my money. And now it's helping your family. The words hung in the air between us, and I realized we'd reached the heart of it. This wasn't about addiction or recovery, or even the money itself. It was about the fundamental belief that my resources belonged to the family collective, that my individual needs were secondary to everyone else's emergencies. I walked to my laptop and ended the video call without explanation, then turned back to Dean. Tell me about the residential program. What? The one in Evanston, the one that costs $15,000. His expression shifted, become guarded. What about it? Did you apply? Well, not yet, but did you call them? I was going to. Have you even looked up their website? The silence that followed was answer enough. I opened my laptop and typed Residential Addiction Treatment Evanston into the search bar. Several facilities came up, but only one cost $15,000 for 6 months. I clicked on their admissions page and read aloud. All applicants must complete a 30-day outpatient program before being considered for residential treatment. Waiting list is currently 8 to 12 months for new admissions. Dean's face had gone pale. When did you complete your outpatient program? I asked. I've been going to meetings. AA meetings don't count as an outpatient program. You know that, right? He slumped forward, head in his hands. I was going to do the outpatient thing. I just needed to get through this first. This? The gambling debt. The threats. I couldn't focus on recovery with all that hanging over me. I felt something shift inside me, a kind of clarity that comes when you finally see a pattern you've been too close to recognize. There's always something, isn't there? Some crisis that has to be solved before you can get serious about recovery. Some emergency that justifies taking money from people who can't afford to give it. That's not fair, isn't it? I pulled up his journal again, flipping to entries from earlier in the year. February. Can't start the program until I find stable housing. March. Need to pay off the back taxes before I can focus on treatment. April. Have to deal with the ex-girlfriend. Situation first. Each entry I read aloud hit him like a physical blow, but I couldn't stop. Years of accumulated frustration and worry were pouring out of me, and it felt both terrible and necessary. You don't want to get clean, Dean. You want to get clean. There's a difference. I am clean, he said quietly. 93 days. From, what? Another pause. Pills. What about gambling? That's different. Is it? When's the last time you placed a bet? I don't know. A few weeks ago. How much? Not much. $50 on a basketball game. I closed the laptop and looked at him. Really looked at him. The clear eyes I'd noticed when he first arrived weren't the eyes of someone 93 days clean from everything. They were the eyes of someone 93 days clean from one specific thing, while still actively engaging in the behavior that had created the current crisis. You're not in recovery, I said. You're just switching addictions. Gambling isn't... It's... Not what? Not a real addiction? Not as serious as drugs? I stood up and walked to my window, needing some distance from his presence. You just stole $5,000 from your niece to pay gambling debts. How is that not serious? When I turned back around, Dean was crying. Not the manipulative tears I'd seen so many times before, but the quiet, hopeless crying of someone who's finally run out of excuses. I don't know how to stop, he whispered. For a moment, I felt the familiar pull to comfort him, to problem-solve his crisis and take on the emotional labor of his recovery. But something in me had shifted fundamentally in the past few days. Maybe it was seeing my bank balance at zero. Maybe it was reading his journal and understanding how calculated his manipulation had been. Or maybe I was just finally tired of carrying everyone else's pain. That's not my problem to solve, I said. He looked up at me, surprised. In all our years of family crises, I'd never said those words before. But I'm family. So am I. We stared at each other across my small living room, and I could see him recalculating, trying to find a new angle of approach. This was how it always went. First the crisis, then the plea for help, then the promise to change, then the guilt when none of it worked. What do you want me to do? I asked. Seriously, what would make you happy right now? I want my family to believe in me. We've believed in you for 20 years. Where has that gotten any of us? He flinched as if I'd slapped him. I know I've made mistakes. This isn't about mistakes, Dean. This is about choices. You chose to gamble away money you didn't have. You chose to let Mom think your life was in danger. You chose to let her steal from her own daughter rather than face the consequences of your actions. I didn't ask her to. You didn't have to ask. You knew she would. I picked up his journal and held it out to him. Take this back. Keep it. Please, read the whole thing. You'll see. I'll see what? More elaborate justifications for why everyone else should fix your problems? I set the journal on my coffee table, between us. I'm done reading about your recovery, Dean. I want to see it. What does that mean? It means stop asking our family for money. It means get a real sponsor and work a real program, and pay back the people you've stolen from. It means proving that you're serious instead of just talking about being serious. He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he looked up again, His expression had hardened into something I recognized. The look he got when he was about to make everything someone else's fault. "You used to care about me," he said. "I still care about you. That's why I'm saying this." "No, you don't. You're angry about the money, and you're taking it out on me." "I am angry about the money. But I'm angrier about the lying, and the manipulation, and the way you've turned our family into a crisis management team that exists to clean up your messes." He stood up abruptly, grabbing his journal from the coffee table. "Fine, I get it. You're done with me." "I'm done enabling you. There's a difference. Sounds the same from where I'm sitting." He walked toward the door, then turned back one more time. "What am I supposed to tell your mother? She's worried sick about you." "Tell her I'm learning the difference between helping and hurting." After he left, I sat in the silence of my apartment and tried to process what had just happened. I'd never spoken to a family member like that before, directly, honestly, without cushioning every hard truth in layers of reassurance and love. It felt horrible and liberating in equal measure. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Dean said, "You two talked. Are you okay?" I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "We need to have a conversation about boundaries." Her reply came immediately. "I'm coming over." "Not tonight. I need some time to think." "Honey, please don't shut us out. We're family. Family." The word that had once meant safety and belonging now felt like a cage, a set of obligations designed to keep me trapped in patterns that served everyone but me. I turned off my phone and went back to work, trying to focus on the client project I'd abandoned when Dean arrived. But my concentration was shot, my thoughts circling around the journal entries I'd read and the conversation we'd just had. For the first time in my adult life, I'd set a boundary with my family, and the sky hadn't fallen. It was a small victory, but it felt enormous. The eviction notice was waiting for me when I got home from the grocery store, taped to my door in a manila envelope with "Urgent Legal Notice" stamped across the front in red ink. My hands were full of plastic bags containing the cheapest food I could find: generic pasta, marked-down produce, and dented cans from the discount bin, but I dropped everything to rip open the envelope. Notice to quit and pay rent or quit premises. Formal language blurred together as I scanned the document, but the important details jumped out with painful clarity. I was 15 days late on rent. I had 5 days to pay in full or vacate the premises. Legal action would be taken if I failed to comply. 15 days late. I counted backwards in my head, trying to make sense of the timeline. Rent had been due on the 1st, and today was. I pulled out my phone to check the date. The 18th. How had 15 days passed without me noticing? The answer came in fragments. Working 18-hour days to make up for my lost emergency fund, surviving on 3 hours of sleep and gas station coffee, turning down every social invitation because I couldn't afford to go anywhere that cost money. I'd been so focused on generating income that I'd lost track of time entirely. I gathered my scattered groceries and unlocked my door, fingers trembling as I tried to process what this meant. 5 days to come up with $800, plus a $50 late fee. I had maybe $200 in my checking account, and 3 client payments that were supposed to come through this week but hadn't yet. The apartment felt smaller than usual as I put away my meager groceries, each item a reminder of how carefully I'd been calculating every purchase. 16-cent ramen packets instead of the 24-cent ones with flavor packets, generic peanut butter instead of name brand, day-old bread that would mold within a week but cost half as much as fresh loaves. I sat at my dining table and opened my laptop, pulling up spreadsheets that tracked every dollar coming in and going out. The numbers were stark and unforgiving. I needed $850 by Friday, but even if all my pending payments came through, I'd only have about $600. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Haven't heard from you in a few days. How are you doing?" I stared at the message, wondering how to respond. How was I doing? I was about to be evicted because my family had stolen my emergency fund, and I was too proud to tell them that their actions had real consequences beyond hurt feelings. Instead of answering, I called Tasha. "Hey, babe," she answered on the second ring. "Please tell me you're calling to make plans for tonight. I just finished the project from hell and I need to celebrate with someone who understands the pain of impossible clients." "Actually," I said, then stopped. The words stuck in my throat, thick with shame and fear. "Actually what?" "Lena, you sound weird." I got an eviction notice. Silence on the other end of the line. "What do you mean you got an eviction notice?" "I mean I'm 15 days late on rent, and I have 5 days to pay or get kicked out of my apartment." "Jesus Christ, why didn't you call me sooner?" "Because I thought I could handle it." "Handle it how? By ignoring it?" I could hear her moving around, probably pacing her office the way she did when she was trying to solve a problem. Tasha was a fixer by nature, but she fixed things with action plans and spreadsheets and direct confrontation. She didn't understand the paralysis that came with having no good options. "I've been working constantly," I said. 18 hours a day. I have payments coming in, but they're not here yet, and... "How much do you need?" $850. "I can cover that." "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. "Absolutely not." "Lena, this is not the time for pride. This isn't about pride. It's about..." I struggled to find the right words. "If I take money from you, how am I any different from Dean? How am I any different from the people who just expect other people to fix their problems?" "You're different because you're not an addict who's been stealing from family for 20 years. You're different because this is a genuine emergency caused by someone else's choices. You're different because you'll actually pay me back." "Will I?" I looked around my tiny apartment, taking in the secondhand furniture and the stack of bills on my counter. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I can barely take care of myself, let alone pay back loans. That's the depression talking. Is it? Or is it reality? Tasha was quiet for a moment, and I could almost hear her choosing her words carefully. "What's really going on here, Lena? Because this isn't just about the money." She was right. Of course, the eviction notice was just the latest symptom of a larger problem I'd been trying to ignore. Ever since Dean's visit 3 days ago, I'd been questioning everything I thought I knew about myself and my family. The conversation with him had lifted a veil I hadn't even realized was there, revealing patterns of behavior I'd been participating in without understanding their full impact. "I think I've been lying to myself," I said finally. "About what?" "About how okay I am. About how well I'm handling everything. About whether the way my family operates is normal or healthy." I got up and walked to my window, looking out at the street below. It was early evening, and people were walking home from work, carrying takeout bags and talking on phones and living lives that seemed impossibly stable compared to mine. "When Dean came over the other day," I continued, "he had this journal, full of entries about his recovery and his plans to pay me back and how serious he was this time. But scattered throughout were all these references to my money, to how he could get it, to how family was supposed to help family. He planned it. He planned it. For months. And when I confronted him about it, you know what he said? He said I used to care about him. As if caring meant never questioning anything he did or holding him accountable for the consequences of his choices. That's manipulation 101. But it worked. For years, it worked. Because some part of me believed that love meant sacrifice. That being a good daughter and niece meant putting everyone else's needs before my own, even when it was destroying me. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of the window. I've been living paycheck to paycheck for 3 years while secretly sending money to my mother. I've been eating ramen for dinner so I could build an emergency fund that was supposed to protect me. And the minute there was a family crisis, all of that careful planning and sacrifice became irrelevant, because family comes first. Always? Always. That's what I was taught. That's what I believed. And now I'm facing eviction because I believed it. The truth of that statement settled over me like a weight. This wasn't just about Dean's gambling or Mom's poor judgment. This was about a fundamental dysfunction in how my family operated and my role in perpetuating it. "Let me loan you the money," Tasha said again, gentler this time. "I can't." "Why not?" "Because I need to figure out how to solve this myself. I need to know that I can survive without constantly relying on other people to rescue me from the consequences of my family's choices. That's not the same thing, isn't it?" We were both quiet for a moment. Outside my window, a couple walked by holding hands, and I felt a sharp pang of loneliness. When was the last time I'd had the emotional bandwidth for a relationship? When was the last time I'd made plans that weren't contingent on my family's latest crisis? "What if you don't figure it out in time?" Tasha asked. "Then I get evicted. And then what?" "I don't know. Find a cheaper place. Move back in with Mom temporarily. Figure it out as I go." Moving back in with your mother seems like the opposite of solving the problem. She was right, but I couldn't see any other options. Every choice felt like a compromise of my principles or my safety, and I was tired of making decisions based on fear. "Maybe that's what I need," I said. "Maybe I need to hit rock bottom before I can figure out how to build something different. Or maybe you need to accept help from people who actually care about you instead of punishing yourself for other people's mistakes." After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment and tried to imagine what rock bottom might look like. Moving back in with Mom would mean giving up the independence I'd worked so hard to achieve. It would mean returning to the role of family caretaker, the one who absorbed everyone else's emotional chaos and financial instability. But maybe that was necessary. Maybe I needed to fully understand the cost of my family's dysfunction before I could find the strength to change it. My phone rang again. Mom's name flashed on the screen and I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up on the fourth ring. "Hi, Mom." "Lena, thank God. I've been so worried about you. Dean said you two had a difficult conversation." "We did. He's really hurt, honey. He thinks you hate him." I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar pull to comfort and reassure. "I don't hate him. No, you don't. You're just upset about the money situation, and you're taking it out on him." "I'm upset about more than the money." "What do you mean?" How could I explain that I was upset about 20 years of crisis management? That I was tired of being the family's emotional and financial safety net? That I was starting to understand the difference between helping and enabling? "I think our family has some unhealthy patterns," I said carefully. "Unhealthy how?" "The way we handle Dean's addiction. The way we make his problems everyone else's responsibility. The way we prioritize keeping the peace over actually addressing the issues. Lena, he's sick. Addiction is a disease." "I know that. But enabling isn't treatment." "What's that supposed to mean?" I took a deep breath, knowing I was about to cross a line I'd never crossed before. "It means that giving him money every time he gets in trouble doesn't help him recover. It just makes it easier for him to avoid the consequences of his choices. So we should just let him suffer? Maybe suffering is part of recovery. Maybe hitting rock bottom is the only thing that will motivate him to get serious about getting clean. I can't believe you're saying this. Mom, he's not clean, he's still gambling. The money you gave him went to pay gambling debts, and he's probably gambling again already. Nothing we do is helping him. He's been to 93 meetings. 4 pill addiction, not gambling addiction. They're 2 different things, and he's only addressing one of them. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. "Your father used to talk like this," she said finally, her voice cold. The comparison hit me like a physical blow. My father had left when I was 10, abandoning us in the middle of one of Dean's worst periods. He'd said he was tired of the drama, tired of the constant crises, tired of watching his wife choose her brother over her family's stability. "That's not fair," I said. "Isn't it? You're talking about abandoning family when they need you most. You're talking about letting Dean suffer just to prove a point. I'm talking about setting boundaries. Same thing. No, it's not." Dad left because he was selfish and couldn't handle difficulty. "I'm trying to figure out how to love you and Dean without destroying myself in the process." "And how's that working out for you?" The question hung in the air between us, loaded with implication. She knew about my financial struggles, had probably guessed that I was having trouble making ends meet. She was pointing out that my attempts at independence were failing, that I needed family support just as much as Dean did. But there was a difference, and I was finally ready to articulate it. "The difference is that I'm trying to solve my problems instead of making them everyone else's responsibility," I said. "I'm working 18 hours a day to make up for the money that was taken from me. I'm not calling you asking for more money or making you feel guilty for my situation." "You don't have to make me feel guilty. I already do." "Good. You should." The words came out harsher than I intended, but I couldn't take them back. And maybe I didn't want to. I should feel guilty for trying to save my brother's life. "You should feel guilty for stealing from your daughter to do it." "I didn't steal. You took money from my account without my permission. That's the definition of stealing. It was a family emergency. My potential eviction is also a family emergency. Are you going to fix that too?" Another long silence. "Are you being evicted?" I looked at the notice sitting on my table, the red ink seeming to glow in the lamplight. "I got a notice today. I have 5 days to pay rent or vacate." "Oh, honey, why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because it's my problem to solve." "No, it's not. We're family. Let me help." "With what money?" "You just gave away $5,000. I have some savings left. Not much, but no." The word came out firm and final. "I don't want your money." "Why not?" "Because I'm tired of this cycle. I'm tired of family emergencies becoming everyone else's financial responsibility. I'm tired of enabling behavior that's hurting all of us." "So what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. But whatever I do, I'm going to do it without making it anyone else's problem." After I hung up, I realized I'd made a decision without even knowing it. I wasn't going to take money from Tasha. I wasn't going to let Mom bail me out with her remaining savings. I was going to face the consequences of my family's choices, even if it meant losing my apartment. For the first time in my adult life, I was going to let myself hit rock bottom and see what I could build from there. It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. The call came from Northwestern Memorial Hospital at 6:23 a.m. on a Thursday, 2 days before my eviction deadline. I was already awake, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of instant coffee and a calculator, trying to perform mathematical miracles that would somehow make my bank balance stretch to cover rent. "Is this Lena Carroway?" The voice was professional, tired, the voice of someone who made these calls too often. "Yes." "This is Dr. Martinez from Northwestern Memorial. I'm calling about your uncle, Dean Carroway. He was brought in last night, and you're listed as his emergency contact." The coffee cup slipped from my hands, shattering against the floor and sending hot liquid across my bare feet. "What happened?" "He overdosed. Heroin, possibly mixed with fentanyl. He's stable now, but it was touch and go for a while." The words hit me like a physical blow. Heroin. After 93 days supposedly clean from pills, after all his promises about being serious about recovery this time, after taking my money to supposedly pay off gambling debts and get his life together. "Is he awake?" I asked, grabbing paper towels to clean up the coffee while trying to process what I'd just heard. "He's conscious, but sedated. The paramedics administered Narcan at the scene, which saved his life. He's asking for you." "I'll be there in an hour." I threw on clothes and grabbed my keys, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of this new information. The hospital was downtown, a 20-minute drive if traffic was light. But my car was running, on fumes, and I had maybe $8 in cash, not enough for gas and parking. I called an Uber instead, watching the cost tick up with each passing block. $12 I didn't have. But what choice did I have? Northwestern Memorial was a maze of sterile corridors and fluorescent lights. I found Dean in the ICU, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. His face was gray, his breathing shallow but steady, and there was a hospital bracelet around his wrist that I couldn't stop staring at. "Hey, kiddo," he said when he saw me, his voice raspy from the breathing tube they'd removed an hour earlier. "Hey." I sat down in the plastic chair beside his bed, not sure what else to say. Part of me was flooded with relief that he was alive. Part of me was furious that we were here again, that his promises had meant nothing, that my money had apparently funded the binge that almost killed him. "I fucked up," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Yeah, you did." We sat in silence for a moment, the steady beep of his heart monitor filling the space between us. I wanted to ask about the money, about when he'd started using again, about why he'd lied to me and Mom about being clean. But he looked so fragile, so close to broken, that the questions felt cruel. "The doctor said you were asking for me," I said instead. I thought I was going to die. His voice was barely a whisper. "I thought the last conversation we'd ever have was that fight in your apartment." "What happened, Dean? Really happened?" He closed his eyes, and for a moment I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then he started talking, his words coming out in a rush like he was afraid he'd lose his nerve if he paused. "I never stopped using." "Not really. I'd been clean from pills for 93 days, but I was still drinking and gambling. And about a month ago, I started buying heroin because it was cheaper than pills and I could get higher for less money." My stomach dropped. "You've been using heroin for a month?" "On and off. I'd use for a few days, then get scared and stop for a week, then start again. I kept telling myself it wasn't that bad because I wasn't using every day. And the gambling debts? Real. I owed $5,000 to some guys who weren't playing around. They gave me until Friday to pay up, or they were going to break my legs. Maybe worse. So that part had been true. The threats, the fear in his voice when he'd talked to Mom, that had been genuine. "But you didn't use the money to pay them off," I said. "I was going to. I swear I was going to. But when I had all that cash in my hands..." He trailed off, staring at the ceiling. I hadn't had that much money at once in years. And I thought, maybe if I just bought enough heroin to last me through the weekend, I could get really high one last time and then use the rest to pay off the debt. "You bought $5,000 worth of heroin?" "Not all at once. I bought some, used it, then bought more. I kept telling myself I was just going to use a little bit and save the rest. But every time I got high, I'd convince myself I needed just a little more. And then more after that. I felt sick. While I'd been working 18-hour days and eating ramen for dinner, while I'd been facing eviction and turning down help from friends, Dean had been on a week-long heroin binge funded by my emergency savings. "How much is left?" I asked. "Of the money?" "Nothing. It's all gone." "And the people you owe?" "Still looking for me, I assume. The overdose happened at a flop house on the west side. I was so high I thought I was going to die, and I realized I didn't want to die in some stranger's shooting gallery. So I called 911 and told them where I was." I stared at him, trying to process this information. "You called 911 on yourself." I was scared. And I was alone. And I kept thinking about that conversation we had, about how I don't really want to get clean. I just want to get clean. And I realized you were right. I've been lying to everyone, including myself. The admission hung between us, heavy with implications. This wasn't just another relapse story, another promise to do better next time. This felt different, realer, The kind of rock bottom that could either destroy someone completely or become the foundation for actual change. "What happens now?" I asked. "I don't know. The doctors want to keep me for observation for another day or two. After that..." He shrugged, a gesture that looked painful with all the tubes and wires attached to his body. "I guess I need to figure out how to stay alive long enough to get clean for real. What about the people looking for you? I'll have to deal with that somehow. Maybe disappear for a while. Or maybe..." He looked at me directly for the first time since I'd arrived. "Maybe face the consequences of my choices instead of running from them." I wanted to ask if he was planning to pay me back, but the question felt pointless. He'd just spent my entire emergency fund on heroin. He was unemployed, homeless, and owed money to dangerous people. The chances of ever seeing that $5,000 again were essentially zero. But for the first time in our relationship, I found that I wasn't angry about the money. I was angry about the lying, the manipulation, the way he'd let Mom and me believe he was making progress when he was actually spiraling deeper into addiction. But the money itself felt less important than the truth he was finally telling. "I'm not going to give you more money," I said. "Ever. No matter what happens, no matter how desperate things get, I'm not going to be your financial safety net anymore. I know. And I'm not going to cover for you with Mom anymore. If you want to lie to her, you'll have to do it yourself. I know. And I'm not going to visit you in rehab or take your phone calls asking for rides or help with anything related to your recovery. That's your responsibility now." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I know. And I don't blame you. I fucked up everything, and I have to live with that." I reached over and took his hand, surprised by how cold and fragile it felt. "I love you, Dean, but I'm done enabling you. Do you understand the difference?" "I think so. Enabling would be giving you money for rehab or a place to stay, or helping you avoid the consequences of your choices. Loving you means wanting you to get clean for real, even if that means watching you struggle through it alone." He squeezed my hand weakly. "Will you tell Ava? About the overdose?" "Yes. About how you spent the money?" "That's up to you. She's going to be so disappointed. She's going to be hurt and scared and probably angry. But mostly she's going to be relieved that you're alive." I stayed for another hour, mostly sitting in silence while Dean dozed on and off. When I finally got up to leave, he called my name. "Lena?" "Yeah?" "I'm sorry. For all of it. For the money. For the lying. For the 20 years of chaos. You deserved better from me." "I know," I said. "But it's not too late to do better." As I walked out of the hospital, I realized something had shifted fundamentally in how I viewed my family's dysfunction. The overdose had stripped away all the comfortable lies we'd been telling ourselves. Dean wasn't a functional addict who just needed a little help to get back on track. He was someone whose addiction had progressed to the point where he was willing to risk death rather than face reality. And I wasn't the family hero who could love him into recovery. I was an enabler whose good intentions had been making his addiction worse. The Uber ride home cost another $12 I didn't have, but I barely noticed. I was thinking about the hospital bracelet around Dean's wrist, about how thin and frail he'd looked, about the possibility that this might finally be the rock bottom that led to real change. Or it might just be another stop on the long road to his eventual death. Either way, I was done trying to control the outcome. For the first time in my adult life, I was going to let Dean face the consequences of his choices without trying to rescue him from them. It felt terrifying and necessary, and like the most loving thing I'd ever done. I spent the rest of Thursday writing and rewriting a letter I wasn't sure I'd ever send. The words kept changing, but the core message remained the same. I was done participating in the family patterns that were destroying all of us. Dear Mom, I need to tell you some things that are going to be hard to hear. After Dean's overdose yesterday, I've been thinking a lot about our family and the ways we've been handling his addiction. I think we've been doing it wrong for a very long time. The money you took from my account didn't go to gambling debts. It went to heroin. Dean has been using for at least a month, maybe longer, and he spent my entire emergency fund on a week-long binge that almost killed him. He's alive, but barely, and only because he was scared enough to call 911 on himself. I know you're going to want to rush to the hospital and take care of him and figure out how to fix this, but I'm asking you not to. I'm asking you to let him face the consequences of his choices without us stepping in to make it easier. I stopped writing and stared at the page. Even on paper, the words felt harsh, unforgiving. What kind of person asked their mother not to help her brother in the hospital? What kind of niece walks away when family needs her most? But every time I started to soften the message, I remembered Dean's gray face in the ICU. I remembered the months of lies about his sobriety, the calculated manipulation to get my money, the casual way he'd risked his life because he knew we'd always be there to clean up the aftermath. I crumpled up the letter and started again. Mom, Dean overdosed on heroin yesterday. He's alive, but he used my entire emergency fund to buy the drugs that almost killed him. This is what helping him has led to. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep participating in a system where his emergencies become our financial disasters, where his poor choices become our responsibility to fix. It's not helping him, and it's destroying me. I'm facing eviction because I don't have the money he stole from me. But I'm not asking you to fix that, because I finally understand that fixing each other's problems isn't what healthy families do. Healthy families support each other without enabling destructive behavior. I love you both, but I'm setting boundaries. I won't give Dean money. I won't lie to protect him from consequences. I won't prioritize keeping the peace over telling the truth. If you can't accept these boundaries, I understand. But I can't continue living the way we've been living. Love, Lena. This version felt more honest, but also more final. Like I was breaking up with my family instead of trying to heal our relationships. I folded the letter and put it in an envelope, then immediately took it back out and read it again. Was I being too harsh? Was I abandoning people who needed me? Or was I finally choosing my own well-being after 27 years of sacrificing it for everyone else's comfort? My phone rang. Mom's name on the screen. Hi, I answered, my voice carefully neutral. Lena, thank God. I just got off the phone with the hospital. They said Dean was admitted last night. Why didn't you call me? I closed my eyes, trying to find the right words. I wanted to see him first, to understand what happened. What do you mean, what happened? He overdosed, didn't he? On pills? No, Mom. On heroin. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Heroin? He's been using for at least a month. The gambling debts were real, but he didn't use my money to pay them off. He used it to buy drugs. That's not possible. He's been going to meetings. He's been clean for 3 months. From pills. Not from heroin. Not from alcohol. Not from gambling. He's been lying to both of us. I could hear her breathing. Change. Becoming shallow and quick. How much of your money did he? All of it. Oh, God. Oh, Lena, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I know you didn't, but that's part of the problem. We keep believing his promises because we want them to be true, even when all the evidence says otherwise. I have to go see him. Which hospital? Northwestern Memorial. But Mom, before you go, I need to tell you something else. What? I looked, down at the letter in my hands, then made a decision. I'm not going to help anymore. With Dean, with his addiction, with the financial crises. I'm done. What do you mean you're done? I mean, I'm not going to give him money or rides or a place to stay. I'm not going to lie to protect him from consequences. I'm not going to participate in the crisis management that's been enabling his addiction for years. Lena, he almost died. Because we keep saving him from the consequences of his choices. Because he knows that no matter how bad things get, his family will swoop in and fix everything. So you're just going to abandon him? I'm going to stop enabling him. There's a difference. I don't understand that difference. The difference is that enabling feels like helping, but actually makes the problem worse. Real help would be letting him hit rock bottom and figure out his own recovery. That's so cold. The words stung because part of me agreed with her. Part of me felt like a monster for walking away from someone who was clearly suffering. But a larger part of me finally understood that my compassion had been misdirected for years. Is it cold to want him to get clean for real instead of just pretending to get clean? It's cold to abandon family when they need you most. What about when I needed you? The question came out sharper than I intended. I'm facing eviction because of the choice you made to give away my money. Where's the family loyalty for me? That's different. How? You're strong. You're capable. You'll figure it out. And Dean isn't capable? He's sick. So was I, Mom. I was sick with codependency and people-pleasing and the belief that my value as a person depended on how much I could sacrifice for everyone else's happiness. But nobody staged interventions for that. She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was small, hurt. Are you saying this is my fault? I'm saying it's all of our fault. We created a system where Dean's addiction was everyone's problem except Dean's, where crisis management became our full-time job instead of letting him manage his own crises. So what are you suggesting? That we just let him die? I'm suggesting we let him live or die based on his own choices instead of ours. I can't do that. I know. And I can't keep doing what we've been doing. After we hung up, I sat with the letter for another hour, adding and subtracting sentences, trying to find the right balance between honesty and compassion. But every version I wrote came back to the same fundamental message. I was choosing myself for the first time in my adult life. The decision felt seismic, like I was splitting my life into before and after. Before, when I believed that love meant unlimited sacrifice. After, when I understood that boundaries were an act of love for everyone involved. My neighbor Nico knocked on my door around 7 p.m., holding a container of what smelled like homemade soup. "Hey," he said when I opened the door. "I made too much dinner and thought you might be hungry." I almost cried at the simple kindness of the gesture. "That's really thoughtful, but I can't." "It's just soup," he said gently. "No strings attached. You look like you've had a rough day." I let him in, grateful for the company and the distraction from my own thoughts. We sat at my small dining table, eating soup and talking about everything except the letter that was still sitting on my counter. "Can I ask you something?" I said after we'd finished eating. "Of course. You work with people in recovery, right?" "Yeah. At a halfway house downtown." "Why? What's the difference between helping someone and enabling them?" He was quiet for a moment, considering the question. Helping empowers someone to solve their own problems. Enabling removes the natural consequences that would motivate them to change. How do you know which one you're doing? If your help is making someone more independent and self-sufficient, you're helping. If your help is making someone more dependent on you, you're enabling. I thought about the years I'd spent sending money to Mom, covering for Dean's absences at family gatherings, making excuses for his behavior to friends and extended family. None of it had made either of them more independent or self-sufficient. What, if helping means watching someone you love suffer? Sometimes, he said. The people I work with had to lose everything before they got serious about recovery. Jobs, relationships, housing, health, all of it. It's painful to watch, but it's often necessary. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? My sister is in recovery, 3 years clean now. But before that, I had to stop giving her money, stop bailing her out of jail, stop letting her live with me when she got evicted. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Did it work? It saved both our lives. She got clean because she finally had to face the consequences of her addiction. And I got healthy because I stopped defining my worth by how much I could sacrifice for her. After he left, I picked up the letter again and read it one more time. Then I sealed it in an envelope and wrote Mom's address on the front. Tomorrow, I would face eviction. Tomorrow, I would have to figure out what came next without a safety net, without family support, without the comfortable patterns I'd relied on for years. But tonight, I was finally ready to choose myself. Friday morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood as I prepared for what felt like the most important day of my life. The eviction deadline was today, and I still didn't have the money. But something had shifted overnight. I wasn't panicking anymore. Instead, I felt a strange sense of clarity, like I was finally seeing my situation without the distortion of fear and guilt. I mailed the letter to Mom on my way to meet with my landlord, Mr. Chen. He was a kind man in his 60s who owned 3 buildings in Lincoln Park and treated his tenants more like extended family than sources of income. When I called to ask for a meeting, he'd agreed immediately, his voice gentle but concerned. His office was in the basement of the building next door, a cramped space filled with maintenance supplies and filing cabinets stuffed with lease agreements. He gestured for me to sit in the metal folding chair across from his desk, then pulled out my file. "Miss Carroway," he said, settling into his chair. "I got your message. This isn't like you to be late with rent." "I know. I'm sorry." There were some unexpected family circumstances that affected my finances. He nodded, not pressing for details. "These things happen. The question is, what's your plan moving forward?" I took a deep breath. "I can't pay the full amount today, but I can offer you $400 now, and I can guarantee the rest within 2 weeks. 400 is better than 0, he said. "But I need to ask, is this a temporary setback? Or are you facing ongoing financial difficulties?" "I think it's temporary. But I also think I need to be honest with you about my situation." For the next 20 minutes, I told him everything. About my family's history with addiction, about the stolen emergency fund, about the patterns of crisis management that had been draining my resources for years. I told him about my decision to set boundaries, about the letter I'd just mailed, about my commitment to building a life that wasn't constantly at the mercy of other people's emergencies. He listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or making notes on a legal pad. "You know," he said when I finished, "I've been a landlord for 30 years. I've seen every kind of sob story, every excuse for late rent you can imagine. But this is the first time someone has told me they're late on rent because they're choosing to get healthy. I'm not asking for special treatment. You're not asking for anything except a chance to prove you can handle your own problems. That's refreshing." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Here's what I'm going to do. I'll accept the $400 today and give you 3 weeks to pay the rest. But I want weekly check-ins, and if you miss another payment, we'll need to discuss other arrangements." "Other arrangements?" "Maybe a smaller unit, maybe a payment plan. We'll figure it out. The point is, I believe you're serious about getting your finances under control, and I want to support that." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you, I won't let you down." "I know you won't." I left his office feeling lighter than I had in weeks. It wasn't a complete solution. I still needed to come up with $450 in 3 weeks. But it was a reprieve that gave me time to figure things out without the constant pressure of imminent homelessness. My phone buzzed with a text from Tasha. "Coffee this afternoon? I have news." We met at our usual spot, a cafe in Wicker Park that served decent coffee, and didn't mind if you worked on your laptop for hours. Tasha was already there when I arrived, sitting at our regular table with 2 cups in front of her. "You look different," she said as I sat down. "Different how?" "Calmer. Less like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders." I told her about the conversation with my landlord, about the letter I'd sent to Mom, about my decision to stop enabling Dean's addiction. She listened with growing amazement, occasionally shaking her head or muttering finally under her breath, "I'm proud of you," she said when I finished. "This can't have been easy." It wasn't. It still isn't. But it feels necessary. "Speaking of necessary," she said, pulling out her phone, "I have something to show you." She opened an app I didn't recognize and turned the screen toward me. It showed what looked like an investment portfolio: stocks, bonds, mutual funds, with a total value of just over $8,000. "What is this?" "My retirement account." "Well, part of it. I started it when I was 25 with $100, and I've been putting in $50 a month ever since." I stared at the numbers, doing quick math in my head. $50 a month for 3 years. That's only $1,800. How is it worth $8,000? Compound interest. Time. Consistent investing. The market has been good to me. She paused, studying my face. "I want to teach you how to do this." "Tasha, I can barely afford to eat," which is exactly why you need to start now. Not with $50. Start with 10, 5, whatever you can manage. The point isn't the amount. It's building the habit and giving your money time to grow. She spent the next hour showing me investment apps, explaining the difference between stocks and index funds, walking me through the basics of retirement planning. It was overwhelming and intimidating, but also exciting. For the first time, I was thinking about my financial future in terms of building wealth instead of just surviving crises. "The key," she said, "is to automate everything. Set up automatic transfers so you're investing before you even miss the money. Start small, increase gradually, and let time do the heavy lifting." "But what if there's an emergency?" "That's what emergency funds are for. Build that back up too, but separately from your investment accounts. The investment money is for your future self, not for your current emergencies." I left the cafe with a notebook full of financial advice and something I hadn't felt in years: hope about my financial future. Not just hope that I'd survive, but hope that I might actually thrive. When I got home, there were 3 voicemails from Mom. I almost didn't listen to them, but curiosity won out. The first message was hurt and confused. "Lena, I got your letter. I don't understand why you're being so harsh. We're family. This isn't how family treats each other." The second was angry. "I talked to Dean and he's devastated. He's trying to get clean and you're abandoning him when he needs you most. This isn't the daughter I raised." The third was different, quieter, sadder. "I've been thinking about what you wrote, about enabling versus helping. I don't know if you're right, but maybe I don't know the difference anymore either. Can we talk?" I called her back. "Thank you for calling," she said, her voice thick with tears. "I wasn't sure you would. I got your messages. I'm sorry about the angry one. I was scared and hurt, and I took it out on you. It's okay. No, it's not. Nothing about this situation is okay." She was quiet for a moment. "I went to see Dean today." "How is he?" "Scared. Really scared. He knows he almost died, and I think that's finally sinking in." Another pause. "He asked me not to give him any money. He said he can't trust himself with it." I felt a flicker of hope. "What did you say?" I said I'd think about it. Which is progress for me, I guess. Usually I would have already written him a check for whatever he needed. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "When did taking care of Dean become more important than taking care of yourself? Or me?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with years of unspoken resentment and hurt. "I don't know," she said finally. "Maybe when your father left. Maybe when Dean first got arrested. Maybe when I realized that if I didn't take care of him, no one would, but someone else would have. The system, social services, treatment programs. There are people whose job it is to help addicts who want to get clean. But he's my brother. And I'm your daughter. I know that. Do you? Because for the past few years, it's felt like Dean's needs always come first. His crises are always the priority. His recovery is always more important than my stability. I never meant for it to be that way. I know you didn't. But that's how it's been. We talked for another hour, the longest honest conversation we'd had in years. She told me about the guilt she'd carried since Dean's first overdose when he was 19, about the promise she'd made to their mother to always look out for him. I told her about the years I'd spent sending her money I couldn't afford, about the sacrifices I'd made to keep our family afloat. "What do we do now?" she asked. "I think we figure out how to love each other without destroying ourselves in the process." "How do we do that?" "I don't know yet, but I think it starts with boundaries and honesty, and maybe some help from people who understand addiction and codependency better than we do." After we hung up, I sat at my laptop and did something I'd never done before. I opened an investment account. I started with $25, money I probably couldn't afford to invest, but money I knew I needed to invest in order to break the cycle of financial insecurity that had defined my adult life. The process was simpler than I'd expected. Within minutes, I had a portfolio consisting of one low-cost index fund and a balance of $25. It wasn't much, but it represented something revolutionary. Money that was mine alone, that wouldn't be given away to family emergencies, that existed solely to build my future. I took a screenshot of the account summary and saved it to my phone. $25 invested for Lena Carroway's future. It was the first financial decision I'd ever made that was completely, unapologetically selfish, and it felt amazing. 6 months later, I'm standing in the doorway of my new apartment, holding a set of keys that represent more than just access to a one-bedroom place in Logan Square. They represent the life I built after I stopped trying to fix everyone else's. The apartment is modest. Hardwood floors that creak in the right places, windows that actually open, and enough space for a proper dining table where I can work without my laptop balanced on my knees. But what makes it special isn't the space itself. It's the fact that I chose it, paid for it, and earned it entirely on my own terms. My investment account now has $437 in it. Not a fortune, but each monthly contribution of $50 feels like a small victory, a promise I'm keeping to my future self. Tasha was right about automation. I barely notice the money leaving my checking account anymore, but I always notice the balance growing. Mom and I talk every Sunday now, real conversations that don't revolve around Dean's latest crisis or my financial stress. She started going to Al-Anon meetings after our phone call that night, learning about codependency and the difference between helping and enabling. We're both still figuring it out, but we're figuring it out together instead of in destructive isolation. Dean is in a residential treatment program in Wisconsin, his third attempt at long-term recovery. This time feels different, though I've learned not to invest too much hope in feelings. What's different is that he's paying for it himself, with money he earned working construction jobs and living in a halfway house for 4 months. What's different is that none of us are managing his recovery for him. He writes me letters sometimes, real letters, on paper, the kind that require thought and intention. The latest one was 3 pages about the amends process and how he's learning to sit with guilt instead of trying to make it disappear by getting high. He didn't ask for anything, didn't promise anything he couldn't guarantee. He just told me. He was grateful I'd finally told him the truth, even when it was hard to hear. I haven't decided if I'll visit him when he graduates from the program. That decision feels months away, and I'm learning to make decisions based on present circumstances rather than past obligations or future fears. Tasha helped me move into the new place, along with Nico, who has become more than just a helpful neighbor. We're taking things slowly, both of us cautious about mixing recovery with romance. But there's something solid and sustainable about the way we care for each other. He doesn't try to fix my family drama, and I don't try to manage his recovery from his own codependent patterns. As I close the door of my new apartment and turn the deadbolt, I think about the emergency fund I'm rebuilding. Slowly, steadily, $50 at a time. It's not just money anymore. It's proof that I can take care of myself without sacrificing my well-being for anyone else's comfort. The apartment is quiet, in a way my old place never was. No family crises interrupting my sleep. No phone calls demanding immediate solutions to problems I didn't create. Just space to breathe, to plan, to build something that belongs entirely to me. It's the first time in my adult life that I'm not waiting for the next emergency. I'm just living, one boundary at a time. 2 years after that devastating phone call, I'm sitting in a coffee shop in Lincoln Park, waiting to meet a woman named Sarah, who found my story through a blog post I wrote about financial boundaries and family addiction. She's 24, recently graduated, and drowning in her alcoholic father's debts, while her mother begs her to help keep the family together. I know her story because it used to be mine. The blog started accidentally, a single post about the difference between helping and enabling that I wrote on a sleepless night 6 months after moving into my new apartment. I thought maybe 3 people would read it. Instead, it went viral in the way that deeply personal stories about family dysfunction sometimes do, resonating with thousands of people who recognize their own patterns in my words. Now I write regularly about financial boundaries, family recovery, and the long process of learning to love people without setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. The blog generates enough income to cover my coffee budget and contribute an extra $100 to my investment accounts each month. More importantly, it connects me with people who understand the specific guilt that comes with choosing yourself over family crisis management. My investment portfolio crossed the $5,000 mark last month, the same amount that was stolen from my emergency fund 2 years ago. But this money feels different. It belongs entirely to me, protected by boundaries I've learned to maintain even when they're uncomfortable. Mom still struggles sometimes, especially when Dean calls from whatever city he's landed in during his latest attempt at independent living. But she's learned to say, "I need to think about that," instead of immediately opening her wallet. She's learned the difference between supporting someone's recovery and funding their addiction. Most importantly, she's learned that loving me means respecting the boundaries that keep me healthy. Dean and I exchange Christmas cards now, surface-level pleasantries about weather and work, no requests for money or promises about tomorrow. He's been consistently employed for 8 months, the longest stretch of his adult life. I don't know if he's truly sober or just better at hiding his struggles, and I've made peace with not knowing. His recovery is his responsibility, and my peace of mind is mine. As Sarah walks into the coffee shop, looking nervous and determined, I remember the woman I was 2 years ago, exhausted, resentful, convinced that my value as a person depended on how much I could sacrifice for everyone else's happiness. That woman couldn't have imagined sitting here, financially stable and emotionally healthy, with enough wisdom to help someone else navigate their own family dysfunction. "Are you Lena?" Sarah asks, approaching my table. "I am." "And you must be, Sarah." She sits down across from me, and I see myself in her tired eyes, her apologetic posture, the way she immediately starts explaining why she doesn't deserve help. "Tell me about your father," I say gently, and watch as she begins to untangle the web of guilt and obligation that's been suffocating her. Some stories end with dramatic revelations or sweeping changes. This one ends with a conversation between 2 women who learned that loving your family doesn't require losing yourself. That feels like the most important kind of ending there is. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.